Hey everyone, hope you're doing well on this Monday evening. All right, who's in here? Well, hello, Deb. Deb's been having fun with the emojis. I just love it. Hey, Patricia. Oh my god, you guys are funny. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting that you have Discord. I don't even know what my name is on there. I think it's 1656. I think that's it. Here, try it, Deb. And you can add me. 1656. I think that's it. So this photo right here, I wanted to show because when I was talking to Selah, um, she had mentioned it, and I didn't really have any idea until she mentioned it, and I searched for it. Okay, so on the left hand side, that's Adam Walsh alive. Hey, cool gamer. Um, so on the right hand side, that's supposed to be Adam Walsh's decapitated head. Um, there's a huge problem here because Adam had both front teeth gone. The one on the right still has a front tooth. Something's very strange here. Either that's not Adam or that's not Adam. You know what I mean? Like there's something that doesn't look right. Yeah, I did message you back, Patricia. I hope you got it. Yeah, your card got hacked. Oh my god. I've had that happen before. It takes a long time to get your money back. Yeah, this photo so the head they found had a tooth still. Yet Adam was missing two teeth. That doesn't even make sense. So that's what makes me more inclined to believe Megan Walsh's story of her saying that this was a setup and her father had something to do with it. Hey, Juju. Oh, we got it back the same day? Oh, good. Took me forever, but I'm bad luck. All right, so I'm going to read some chapters. I'm still stuck in the middle of a chapter, but I'm going to read this book, and then afterwards, I'm going to show a video. Hey, Amanda. Yeah, because right now I'm in the middle of a chapter. Alrighty. The FBI guys were wondering about the abilities of an HPD investigator who seemed less than enthusiastic about pursuing the interrogation and suggested that an expert ought to be handling it. So I asked them how come they weren't involved. Because they said they couldn't just Bigfoot the case. They had to be officially invited in by the local police agency whose case it was, and so far they hadn't been asked. He's talking about the FBI. I called up Hoffman again. Why aren't you in Milwaukee talking to Jeffrey Dahmer? This is when, remember when they assumed they pretty much stated that Jeffrey Dahmer had done this to his son, which we all know now that he didn't because his youngest victim was 14 years old, and well, Adam was 6. This time Hoffman said that he was going to go, but that he had to wait for a travel voucher. Jeffrey Dahmer was a confessed serial killer, responsible for the deaths of at least 11 people, including a 14-year-old boy. He had a past history of child molestation. He had 3 severed human heads in his refrigerator when he was arrested. In July of 1981, the month that Adam was abducted, Dahmer might have been living in Hollywood, Florida. I contacted the Hollywood police at least twice about something questioning Dahmer. I had arranged for an official letter promising that I would not try to have him extradited. I had spoken to the state attorney's office, been in touch with the FBI in Milwaukee, offered to pay Hollywood police travel expenses out of my own pocket. Exactly, Deb. No, he didn't. He thought he was 18. He was 14, I believe, Deb. Yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer did not know that. Oh, wait. Yeah, he did. And, no, wait. He didn't know he was 14, but then he went after that 14-year-old's brother. Yeah, that was gross. He's gross. I had passed along information that the lawyer who had put up all the roadblocks to an interrogation of Dahmer was no longer even involved in the case. Did you know that Dahmer's lawyer quit? I asked Hoffman. No, he said he didn't. On August 13th, 1992, Jack Hoffman traveled to the Columbia Correctional Facility in Madison, Wisconsin, to interview Jeffrey Dahmer. It was a thorough interrogation, conducted for the most part by the investigator who accompanied Hoffman, FBI Special Agent Dan Kraft of the Behavioral Science Unit. Dahmer was both cooperative and candid during the interview. Yes, he had killed all those victims. Yes, he had lobotomized one of them and kept them alive that way for days. Yes, he had dismembered and cannibalized his victims. But no, he had not killed Adam Walsh. I have a trigger warning on my screen here for you guys, but still, trigger warning. The stuff is really bad. In their written report, both Kraft and Hoffman concluded that Dahmer was telling the truth. There was no reason to believe that he had in any way been involved in Adam's murder. It had only taken 13 months to find out. At the end of 1994, the suspicions that I had had were now more than strong doubts. Joe Matthews, on his own, had been pushing the HPD to take another look at Adam's case. Matthews was convinced that Otis O'Toole was still the prime suspect and couldn't understand why Toole had never been indicted. All right, so Otis O'Toole. There's been police enforcement, interviewers, and stuff like that. They all say his name different. It's spelled and looks like Otis, but I've heard people say Otis, so I don't know. I think I'm just going to go with Otis. Both of the brothers looked a lot older. That was a problem for Dahmer. Even thought it was, yeah, I agree, 100%. What Joe wanted more than anything was for the HPD brass to let him have a crack at interviewing Toole in prison up in Jacksonville. As it turned out, at the same time that Matthews was trying to get the case reopened, a new pair of supervisors over at the HPD were also coming to the conclusion that Adam's case deserved some renewed attention. They had tapped a young cold case detective named Mark Smith to start focusing on it again. Over just the past few months, it seemed that the cops were taking more of an interest in Adam's case than anyone had in years. I didn't know much about the specifics. I did know that 13 years after Adam's death, no one had been charged in his murder, and that it was about time someone took a closer look at this case. I also knew that there is no statute of limitations on homicide. Speaking of the Jeffrey Dahmer case, so I was able to watch it thanks to Patricia, and I think I'm like 3 episodes shy of, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but the last episode I'd watched was when the mother broke down because of her son. She found out that what Dahmer did to him. I broke, and I haven't been able to watch it since. I don't know if I can finish it. Yeah, it was really freaking bad. If I hadn't been able to get any justice for Adam, I was at least getting it for the other people. Week in, week out for 8 years. America's Most Wanted had featured hundreds of stories on bank robberies, rapists, and murderers. Hey, SD. You couldn't finish it either? Yeah, it was. I tried. I did. I thought I didn't know it was going to be the way it was. Um, man, once the woman broke for her son, it broke my heart for her and her son. You know what I mean? It was really hard. Really, really hard. But my favorite stories, the ones that I really loved, were the ones that led to the return of a missing child. There was nothing like it, absolutely nothing to compare to what it felt like when I suddenly got a phone call telling me that a missing child had been found, unhurt and alive. In 1996, we got the idea of holding an annual reunion of all the kids who had been returned safely as a result of the show. A big party was to be held in Washington on the mall near the base of the Capitol on May 25th, National Missing Children's Day. Is it worth finishing? Okay. I might try tonight. Actually, no, I won't do it tonight because this book, it's too much already. Our plan was to tape the reunion to run as a special edition of the show that week, and for a lot of reasons, I was in a pretty good mood. 3 days before, I had been told that AMW was definitely being renewed for the upcoming season. After I finished the reunion taping, I was going to fly up to New York for the big annual meeting with all the ad agencies and sponsors to introduce Fox's new fall lineup. I crammed her. I was thinking how phenomenal it was that this was going to be our ninth season. And here I was heading to a reunion attended by all of these missing children who, thanks to the show, have been returned to their parents unharmed. I was thinking about how much I had to be grateful for. We were driving down Constitution Avenue with my assistant, Cherry Nolan, and my bodyguard, John Reed. We were looking out the... He has got a bodyguard? I'm waiting for the... Shut up. We were looking out the window of the car. As we got closer to the Capitol, we caught sight of the brightly colored tent that had been set up for the reception. Just then, the car phone rang. It was Chase Carey, one of our top guys at Fox. I don't know how to tell you this, John, Chase said. You know that you're the most valuable guy at the network, but your show isn't going to be on the fall schedule. The show is canceled. Don't bother coming up to New York for the presentation. With Acme. Oh my God. It took a second for that to sink in. Chase, what are you talking about? I was just out in Hollywood 4 days ago, and they told me the show had been re-upped. John, it's the toughest decision we ever had to make, and we want you to know that you're still part of the network. You're the guy who made this network. We want you to do movies of the week, other projects for us. We want you to keep you on contract, just not for this show. I was so stunned that I could hardly talk. I didn't know what to say. Chase, I'm not an actor or a TV star. This show is what I'm all about. What I'm all about is the show. Well, when everything settles down, we'll talk about it. But for now, John, the decision's been made. Your show is canceled. Right, Patricia? I can't either. Like, the left is I've shown that photo before of Adam. I don't get it. And then the head that was found has a tooth. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, and now he's saving the world, right? But by that time, we had pulled up to where the reception was going to be held. Paul Sparrow, a senior producer for AMW, was tapping on the window, wondering what was taking me so long to get out of the car. He was worried about getting me into the reception on time because Dianne Feinstein, the California senator, was there and would be speaking, and all the kids, their parents, and the tipsters from those cases were lined up, waiting to meet me. And Sparrow still thought we were going to have to make the shuttle team New York. No, you're right, Deb. It's not. That just freaks me out. For that, I'm sorry, that's not Adam. So I'm with Megan on this. Where the fuck is her brother? He's completely gone without a trace. Like, why would they put that out for the public to see, knowing clearly it's not the same mouth? It doesn't. I don't. It just doesn't fly with me. It doesn't make any sense. If we were taken off the hair, who was going to catch all the bad guys? Who was going to bring down the scumbags if it wasn't us? Who would do that if it wasn't me? A million thoughts were going through my head. How was I going to tell the 50 loyal members, not the filthy? How was I going to tell the 50 loyal members of the AMW staff, people who had mortgages and families to support, who had worked day and night for the show, that they weren't going to have a job anymore? No, it's not the same person. Not at all. And now I had to get out there and put up the brave front at this wonderful reunion of missing children. It was unbearable, but no one knew. I made sure of that. I owed that much to those kids. I've seen the footage of myself, and there's no way you can tell. The AMW special on the Missing Children's Reunion aired that Saturday night, and the only thing viewers saw were all those happy, beautiful little kids and their parents, and me smiling and hugging people as if nothing had happened. The very last episode of America's Most Wanted was scheduled to air on September 21st, 1996. It seemed appropriate to me to have it finally feature the one case that we had never done, the most important story of all, the story of the investigation of Adam's murder. Nobody wanted to push me into doing it myself, so we hired a reporter named John Turchin at Miami's Fox station, WSBN Channel 7, who put it together using tips and information that Joe Matthews and Mark Smith had given him. Turchin tracked down the former Sears security guard, Kathy Schaefer, who talked about how she had sent Adam out of the store that day. He reported that, 13 years before, the cops had found a white Cadillac that Toole claimed was the car he had abducted Adam in. but that they had lost it, and that there had been bloodstained carpet samples taken from the car, but that those were now lost too. Figures. It's Nikki's chat. Turchin also did an on camera interview with a guy named William Missler, a witness who had come forward to the Hollywood police 5 years before to say that he had seen a man in a white Cadillac put a little boy into a car in front of the Sears store on the day that Adam was abducted. It was a powerful segment, and its conclusion was clear. All of the best evidence that had been uncovered to date still pointed to a man who was once the prime suspect, but who had never been indicted, a man named Otis O'Toole. Hey, Teresa. There you go, making me hungry. I know. As soon as I see her name, I think, food. We used something special to end that segment. Not long before, when we had moved offices, Sherry discovered an old cardboard box that she had packed up for me a couple years before. In it were some film canisters that I told her maybe we ought to have developed. Maybe there were some old home movies, I said. Maybe there was even something of Adam on them. You can hear my cat. She's snoring. That's her snore. She's way across the room, and that's how she snores. She's fat. Sherry did have the film developed, and that footage was what we decided to use for the final episode of America's Most Wanted, our 427th, which aired on September 21st, 1996. The segment showed Adam in his baseball uniform running around the bases, swinging his bat and making faces at the camera, the only remaining images of my son's last baseball game. In those weeks before our final episode, the one thing that I could not understand was how a program that had gotten more than 400 of this country's most dangerous fugitives, including 11 men on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, could similarly be taken off the air. We had helped recover 20 children. We had caught the guy who set a 1976 car bomb in Washington that killed a former Chilean ambassador to the United States. We don't do UFOs, I told the press. We save lives. When the parents of a missing child are desperate on Friday, we put them on a Sunday. We caught 37 child molesters in one 8-month period. I wonder why it was canceled. She is loud. Claire. Psst. Shh. There. I guess the executives at Fox thought that the outcry would die down in a month or two, that the public would say, well, I guess it was a business decision and let it go. But the public didn't. By the time our last segment aired, something had already started happening. Letters, tens of thousands of them, began flooding into Fox offices. By the time it was all over, some months later, 185,000 people had written to Fox protesting the show's cancellation. 55 members of Congress wrote in. So did 37 state governors and all 50 state attorneys generals. One postcard from New Mexico thanked Fox for taking the show off the air and was signed by one of the criminals. Yeah, I mean, that would make sense, Patricia, but the thing is, a tooth can't grow on a dead body, and he was reported to be murdered that same day he was kidnapped. That's the thing. Because I thought that too. I had to research it a bit. A nurse from North Carolina stood outside the Fox network television lot in California for a week to protest the decision because a planned segment on her murdered brother had been canceled along with the show. A guy in New Jersey sponsored resolutions in 29 townships calling on the network to reconsider. The FBI even issued a statement. Everyone was saying the same thing, asking, pleading, and demanding that AMW be put back on the air. Yeah, like the left one, I think is his baseball uniform one. I can't remember, but the one on the right is when they found, that's all they found was his head apparently, and that's what they found. And he couldn't have grown a tooth because the same day he was abducted was the same day he was murdered. That's why everybody's like, okay, well, this can't be real. Yeah, you thought that too, Deb? Yeah. And it took time to find the head, yep. And I don't think it would, I'm sorry, but I don't think it would still have that much skin on it if it was in a murky water, you know what I mean? It would have been bloated and exactly, it's someone's child, and yet Whose child is it? It's a huge discrepancy. I mean, it's obvious just for anybody with eyeballs. I don't understand it, and I don't know. I mean, I would want to know whose child's head that really is. In the end, America's Most Wanted did go off the air for a grand total of 6 weeks. On September 24th, David Hill and Peter Roth, the newly appointed president of the Fox Entertainment Group, called to say that we were back in business, which then turned us into probably the shortest canceled program in television history. During our hiatus, someone called us about a case that truly broke my heart. In Salina, Kansas, a guy had broken into a home one night and killed 3 members of one family: the great grandmother, the grandmother, and a 5-year-old grandson. Shit. That's what I'm saying. If he accepted this as a picture of his son, or the head of his son, knowing what his son looks like, that's fucked up. He's in on it, is what I'm thinking. In one horrible crime, this animal had devastated 3 generations. The police department in Salina was so small that it didn't have a chance of tracking down this murderer. But the letters and calls that we received from the people of Salina were begging us, if we ever get back on the air, they said, please, please profile this guy. Yeah, exactly, Deb. Yeah, from what I understand, there was even a debate over how long the head had been severed, but they just went with the date Adam went missing. Yeah, yeah. America's Most Wanted officially returned to the airwaves on November 9th, 1996, and that night I named the suspect in the Selena murders as America's Most Wanted's public enemy number one. 25 minutes after the show ended, we caught the guy hiding out in a homeless shelter in Boston. That's awesome. I mean, the show did really, it did good. It did, but just him. Now that I'm learning about this, you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm with you, Patricia. It all doesn't make sense. That's why I want Megan to come up on my panel. Sayla's been talking to her, so I'm hoping we can try and get to the bottom of this anyways. That would be nice. It was a gratifying close to an unhappy chapter in the show's history. It made me feel good, but not good enough to erase the devastating news that I had learned just 6 weeks before. During our segment on Adam's murder, we had included what, at the time, was the single best synopsis of his case that anyone had ever done. We said that the most likely suspect in the crime was still Otis O'Toole, and that Toole on death row in Rayford Prison near Jacksonville might still be coaxed into a confession. Toole was sick, suffering from cirrhosis and possibly AIDS, but he had hinted that he might be willing to talk to the right interviewer. And I was going to get him to talk. I knew that Mark Smith, the HPD cold case detective, had spent 2 days trying to interview Toole, but that he hadn't really gotten anywhere. If Otis Toole gets sick, you've got to let me know, I told Mark. Whatever you do, don't let him die without me knowing. I knew that I could get somebody into the prison who could wear a wire or bring a tape recorder or a video camera. Probably my friend Joe Matthews. I was willing to go straight into the Department of Corrections. The Hollywood police and the DA's office could go screw themselves. I had friends at the FDLE and the FBI. I was going to pull some strings and get Joe Matthews in to see Otis Toole. I knew that Toole was in prison, facing 5 life sentences, and I understood that he was never going to get out, but that wasn't what was important to me. A deathbed confession from Toole would be the only thing that could finally put everything to rest. A deathbed confession was my last best hope. 2 days after the September 21st segment on Adam aired, an anonymous tip came in to AMW hotline operator, who immediately transferred the call to my executive producer, Lance Heflin. How stupid are you guys? Said a voice on the other end of the line. What are you talking about? Lance asked. Otis Toole is dead, the voice said. He died 5 days ago at Rayford. Shit. I sincerely believe Walsh and authorities or someone were covering up something. Something is just wrong with this whole thing. I've always thought someone they knew did something in the cover. Yeah, I'm with you, Deb. I completely agree. It's, I totally agree. And with Megan speaking out, her children are now gone, taken from her own father. How sick is that? You're right, Patricia. Why not? I mean, clearly we're seeing the evidence, and clearly it doesn't match up. It makes no damn sense whatsoever. That's why I wanted to put this up for you guys to look at and kind of, I don't know, try and figure out what's what, you know? Yeah, it's not him. So then, where's Adam and who is this child here? Hey, Lori. All right, now we're on chapter 13, and this one is titled The Case File. Yeah, exactly, he had no front teeth. Because on the left side, that's Adam. On the right side, I don't know whose child that is. In 1932, not long after the body of Anne and Charles Lindbergh's baby son was found in a shallow grave in New Jersey countryside, a reporter bribed a funeral home director and a coroner into letting him take a picture of the child's partially decomposed corpse. The reporter's newspaper didn't publish it, but bootleg copies of the photograph known to Lindenberg. Lindbergh historians of the coffin shot later became an underground novelty item, selling in bars and on the street corners for a few dollars a piece. That is disgusting. I didn't know there was a photo. Over the years, I had learned a lot about the press, both about its power and about how low it could stoop. As early as 6 months after Adam's death, the Miami Herald wanted to do a story on how Adam's case was progressing. One of two reporters working on the story went to interview Les Davies, one of my closest friends, kicked off her shoes, and spent hours interviewing him. She seemed to think that I had some sort of gambling links because the plans for the Paradise Grand called for it to be next to a casino. She was saying, now, we've all heard the rumors, about the drug retribution and all, Les remembers, and I kept telling her, quite honestly, that I had no idea what she was talking about. Still, when the story was published, it said that police had heard the nebulous rumors of dealings with Bahamian casinos, of mafia connections, of narcotics smuggling. You don't think anyone would look closer at, like, why would anyone question me or U.S.? Seriously thought they were all untouchable. Blah, blah, blah. Yes, that I totally agree with that statement, 100%. Absolutely. They didn't think that anyone would actually look because, look at John Walsh. He like rocketed into popularity with America's Most Wanted, and he had all these connections now. So yeah. Yeah, why would anybody question me or the U.S.? Seriously thought they were all untouchable and above the... Yep, I'm with you on that one. One tale had Walsh refusing to be a drug courier and Adam's abduction as retaliation. Oh, here we are getting into the motives. I don't know, Patricia, but I'm getting into it right now. So they're saying that this casino had mafia connections and narcotics smuggling. So they're saying tale here. One tale had Walsh refusing to be a drug courier with Adam's abduction as retaliation. So there's one theory. And they said that tips had poured into the HPD allegedly that an icy and stone-faced Brevet had been involved in Adam's death, a suspicion, it said, that had been shared at one time or another by more than a few Hollywood detectives. Holy shit. On top of everything else that had happened to us, that kind of innuendo pained and infuriated me. Then a year and a half later, when we dropped the suit against Sears, we had to go through it all again, the whole Jimmy Campbell episode and another slew of stories that dragged us through the mud. Why would they drop the suit against Sears, though, if Sears lost their child? I mean, they would have had a pretty damn good case right there. I would have never stopped. So that's weird to me. Stories that seemed to suggest that what had happened to Adam was somehow our fault because Brevet and I weren't really the all American family after all. So, from experience, I knew full well what the press was capable of, or thought I did. So, here, right now, as I'm reading this, there was already stories circling around the Walshes. You know what I'm saying? Um, Rumors always start from somewhere. I'm not saying they're all true. I'm just saying that rumors, there's always a piece of truth to it. Always, even a smidge. It was that experience that made me suspicious on the morning of January 12th, 1995, when my executive assistant, Sherry Nolan, sent me a fax that had arrived at my Washington office. It came on the letterhead of the Mobile Press Register and was signed by a reporter named Jay Grayland. Dear Mr. Walsh, I'm writing to request an interview with you. I would like to discuss a range of topics, including your life and where you are emotionally and otherwise 14 years after Adam's death. I didn't either, Teresa. It's just crazy to me that even in this book written how many years ago? 20 years ago? Longer? that there's suspicion. You know what I mean? Graylin went on to say that he wanted to discuss the status of Adam's case with me, that he wanted to meet me in person, and that he was willing to travel anywhere that would be most convenient for me. I'm sure your schedule stays full, and I will gratefully take whatever time you can spare, he wrote. If I could watch you at work with our interviews squeezed in, that would be great. Something about it just didn't feel right to me. I remember asking Sherry, what do you think this guy really wants? Graylin kept trying to contact me, and I kept ignoring him. On February 21st, he sent a certified letter. My newspaper is committing much in time and resources to this project. Won't you please help us in our effort to help you find Adam's killer? Then on March 24th, he showed up, unannounced, at the Fox studios in Washington, where executive producer Lance Heflin told him in no uncertain terms that I was not going to be talking to him. Wonder why. On the morning of Sunday, May 7th, 1995, my instincts were proved correct. That's when the first of a three-part series of tabloid-style articles sent to us by a congressman friend in Alabama appeared in the Mobile Press Register under the screaming headline, Adam Walsh, Myth and Mystery. I want to read that article. I want to see what they say. I'm just going to fold this page so I don't forget. Grayland, the sole reporter for the series, wrote that he had taken a special interest in the case ever since. As a copy editor 14 years before in Baton Rouge, he had written some headlines for Adam's story. I guess that gave him some special expertise, because now he had gone back into the library and looked at some of those old pictures of Adam. He wrote and said, as we stare into one another's eyes, a realization forms, an understanding. Adam's eyes seemed to ask for help. Adam Walsh became more than a story, and I had a whole new reason for telling it. Raylan hinted that the story of Adam's murder was just that, a story. Holy crap. That there had been cover-ups in this case, and that he was going to be the guy to finally get to the bottom of them. Something has stopped efforts to really get this story from the beginning, one unnamed source said. Okay, I didn't know this was going to be in the book. That's, wow. He reported that I'd refused to talk to him, as if I had something to hide. Well, excuse me, John, but you didn't want to talk to him. You had people answering for you and telling this guy you wanted nothing to do with him. That's what I just read. Now you know what happened to the other reporters, said another source, who happened to be none other than Rex Conrad, the bottom-dwelling attorney for our Sears suit 12 years before. Conrad also said that he believed that Reve had left Adam in Sears not for 10 or 15 minutes on the day that he was abducted, but perhaps for as long as an hour and a half. Wow. Granlund reported that during a 2-hour interview with Dick Witt, the Hollywood police chief, Witt had told him that at the time of Adam's abduction, there was no reason to suspect a stranger abduction. Oh, I didn't know that. And that now the probability, emphasis added, is that there is no John or Reve Walsh connection to the death of their son. All of that was hard enough to take, but in addition, the Mobile Press Register did something that I would not abide. They had also taken upon themselves to publish the location and a photograph of my family's house and yard, along with a description of my children's school. My feeling was that if someone wants to hurt me for some reason, they can go right ahead and try. They could do it to me personally, but they had no right to do it to my wife and children. I've been getting death threats for years. I had bodyguards and security protection. I had lived with the sleazy innuendo that the press every now and then copped up about Adam's murder, but I would not sit by silently when, to sell newspapers, and sent a photographer out without my knowledge or permission to photograph my home, the place where my wife and children live. What in God's name did this newspaper hope to accomplish by doing such a thing? And you had to wonder what Jay Grayland thought was going to be in store for him once the opus had been seen by the world. Throughout the series, he kept mentioning the Pulitzer Prize. I asked Sherry to fax articles to Mike Christensen, a trusted friend and attorney in Fort Lauderdale who had done a lot of pro bono work for the Adam Walsh Center and who had handled some legal things for me in the past. At that time, I was still keeping in touch every so often with HPD about Adam's case, and now, what I was hearing from Ben was that this Grayling guy was trying to write a book about Adam's murder that was probably going to talk about my connections with the mob and God knows what else. I wanted to know from Christensen if there was anything that I could do to stop this kind of crap. Shit. But that would not be the worst of it. As it turned out, beginning in November of 1994, Grayland had been calling people up and trying to get them to talk about Adam's case. He went down to Hollywood, where one morning at 9 a.m. he placed a call requesting an interview to the office of Hollywood Police Chief Dick Witt. Much to Grayland's surprise, Witt's secretary came back to the phone after checking with the chief and asked if Grayland could be there in an hour. Grayland talked to Witt for 2 hours and afterward called up Mark Smith, the HPD cold case detective. Grayland told Smith that Chief Witt had said that it was okay for Grayland to see the case file, all of it. Smith was incredulous. No one in their right mind, let alone the chief of police, would hand over the confidential case file on a still active homicide investigation. So after he hung up with Grayland, Smith immediately put in a call to Dick Witt and asked if that was true. No, said Witt. He had never said any such thing. Then a week before Grayland's first article appeared, the most frightening thing of all that had happened. That's when the Mobile Press Register, the great champion of the First Amendment, went to court in Broward County to try to get its hands on Adam's case file. Hey, Socks. Hey, Two Skulls. Oh, you're in the mountains? Oh, reception's probably sucks, but you know what? It's probably so beautiful. I'm jealous. I need access to everything. I need answers. Yeah. Yeah, how's your hubbin doing? Hubbin. Your hobby. In the years since it happened, a lot of sickos has claimed to know something about Adam's murder. Some out of revenge, others in a twisted quest for glory. All I knew was that what I had learned from any FBI contacts, that whoever murdered Adam was a psychopath, and that it's usually hard to know whether these guys are telling the truth or completely fabricating it. And had seen enough in my FBI presentations with Wrestler to know that the normal Judeo-Christian ethics don't apply here. Hey, Benita. You didn't get a notification? The only thing I can do is tell you to hit the bell. If you've already hit the bell, then unhit the bell and hit the bell again. I don't get it. I don't know why this is happening. Like Melanie, she's not here and she's always wants to be here. I don't know how to get in touch with her because she never gets a notification. You ring it every day, eh? Same with Melanie. It's stupid. I hate it. My subs keep going down like crazy too. Like I just had 2,210 and now I'm at 2,200 in one day. I don't know what's going on. People keep getting unsubbed. Are you lying to me about how you killed that woman and stabbed her, sir? Was it really 147 times? Or was it actually 192? No, the only way to tell for sure if what these guys are telling you is true is to back it up with some hard corroborating evidence. You select all. Did I look on Reddit? Nope. Do I need to see something? I still haven't made my video for tomorrow, so I'll check it. Miss my daughter singing in the national anthem with choir at the b-ball game because the stupid video call. Oh. You're in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I have no idea what it is, but as soon as I hear mountains, I'm thinking it's beautiful. I'm sorry you're in pain and that you missed that. That's horrible. If, for example, Adam's remains had been found next to the stump of a sawed-off maple tree and that was never publicized, and some lunatic came forward saying, I killed Adam Walsh and I left his remains next to a sawed-off maple tree, that confession would certainly have some weight. If the same fact had been published in all the newspapers, it would be virtually useless. Hearsay, public knowledge, something that a smart defense lawyer could come up with in the blink of an eye. Even I, as Adam's father, had no idea what was in the case file. I also knew that the cases based on a suspect's confessions are extremely tough to prosecute. The accused can suddenly claim in court that the cops beat him up to make him confess, or that he's just decided to recant. Anyone in law enforcement knows that the way cases are made is by keeping certain sensitive information confidential, and all the legal experts were telling me the same thing. If the case files are opened up, John, you're screwed. On Monday, May 15th, 1995, a week after Grayland's first article appeared, I walked through the glass front door of the Hollywood Police Department for the first time in 14 years. He's not allowed to do anything still. Oh. You have some ideas? I hope they work. Okay, so the pictures I have on the screen, on the left-hand side, that's Adam when he's alive. The one on the right is supposedly his remains, which I don't believe for a second because the mouths don't match up. Adam is missing 2 teeth when he went missing, right? How does this severed head show up with a tooth grown when he was apparently killed on the same day? It doesn't make any sense at all. You'll be driving? Okay. I'll keep you company. Oh, good, 2 skulls. I was there for a meeting that my lawyer, Mike Christensen, had set up between me, Joe Matthews, my bodyguard, John Reed, the Hollywood police chief, Dick Witt, and an HPD officer named Paul Dungan. By that time, Joe Matthews and the HPD cold case detective Mark Smith had began looking into the case again, and we knew what we would have to prove to keep it confidential, that this was still an active homicide investigation. Because as everyone knows, there is no statute of limitations on a homicide. The lawyer said that never in the history of this country had the media been allowed to look at the confidential case file in an unsolved capital murder case. I'd already decided that now, this time, I wasn't going to take it anymore. I was no longer going to be the humble, non-participatory victim. Well, that's a word. Participatory. Non-participatory victim. It's a mouthful. Right off the bat, at that meeting, I said, I've supported the Hollywood Police Department for years. I've done everything they asked me to. And now I want to know what's going on. What exactly is the status of my son's case? By that time, I had addressed the International Association of Chiefs of Police, been a consultant to the Justice Department, been catching serious dangerous criminals on my show for 7 years. And now I wanted some justice for my son. I wasn't pounding the table, but I made myself completely clear. I said that we had heard that Grayland was planning a book, and I figured it would feature the famous John Walsh mob connection. So, I want to know what you're going to do about this, I said. I want you to tell the newspapers clearly and for the record that I've never had any associations with the mafia, that I've never had my legs broken, that I'm not a drug lord and don't have any drug-related... I wonder if any of that is true, and that's why his son was taken. Aw. That's awesome, Tricia. Ever float your acne. Exactly, Aesop's. I don't know if he's exactly, yeah, the mafia and a head cut off, his legs broken, his son's missing. This clearly isn't the head of his son. Like, what the hell? So for the record, that I've never had any associations with the mafia and I've never had my legs broken, that I'm not a drug lord and don't have any drug related associations, and who would know better than the Hollywood police, that John Walsh and his family have nothing to hide. Nothing. Definitely making me go home. At that meeting, Dick Witt, the Hollywood police chief, was asked point blank if there was any official suspicion that I was somehow affiliated with the mafia. We were all sitting there, expecting him to say how ridiculous even the idea of that was. Instead, what Witt said was, anyone who goes to, here he mentioned a well known Fort Lauderdale restaurant, for lunch has something to do with the mafia. I don't know what the well known restaurant is because they didn't put it in here, but apparently, if you go there, you are part of the mafia. Really. I knew that Adam's murder had happened a long time before Dick Witt came on board, but now, if Grayland really was going to try to get the files, then the ones who would have to fight him off would be the Hollywood police. Technically, I had no legal standing in the motion. I, after all, was just the father of the victim. Dick Witt and the HPD would be the defendants, the ones in whose official interest it was to keep their case file sealed. So now, whether I liked it or not, the HPD was part of our team. Above all, I could not do anything to alienate them, no matter what they had or hadn't done. I didn't want them to completely turn their backs on Adam's case, and I also believed that Mark Smith deserved a chance. He, after all, seemed to be making a lot more headway than anyone else in the 14 years. After the meeting, Mike Christensen sent a memo to the Hollywood City Attorney, Joel Cantor, saying that I was thrilled and delighted that HPD is taking a strong and affirmative stance on this case. I wonder what that restaurant was. Because of where you eat at Sheesh, it would be nice for a heads up. There's no way that's his head. The mouth is completely. Yeah, I'm with you, Deb. There's no way. Absolutely no way. On May 18th, the Mobile Press Register made it official. They asked the court to enter an order allowing them to have immediate access to the HPD file on Adam's case. When a reporter asked why he was pressing to open the file if Adam's family was opposed, Grayland stated, "The great irony in this is that I'm only doing what John Walsh has made a career out of doing." At the first hearing on June 12th, there was more bad news. The Sun Centennial in Fort Lauderdale was joining the Mobile Register as a plaintiff. There's an Italian restaurant in Tampa I love, and so what if the mob is there too? Food is good and I love it. Who cares about the others in the place? But yeah, I have accused too of being really wow. Yeah, the friend that identified Adam's remains. Yep. Look at the situation. People can get away with a lot right in the open simply by calling it a conspiracy theory. Yep. The papers were going to invoke the Florida Sunshine Act. So now they were turning it into a free speech issue. Of course, this had nothing to do with them wanting to sell newspapers. At the hearing, Brennan admitted under oath that he had had an interview with Dick Witt, but that Witt hadn't really told him much. No specific information about the case, just some generalities about how cold cases are worked. They never asked him if the interview went on for 2 hours. You'll be back? Alrighty. For our side, Mark Smith testified that Adams was a cold case and that no arrest warrants had yet been issued, but that Mark was working on 2 or 3 suspects. That was enough to make the court deny the paper's motion for immediate access to the records. Because of the assignment of Smith to the case, it should be considered active. The judge, the Honorable Leroy H. Moe, concluded. But Moe wasn't going to let that ruling stand indefinitely. The Mobile Register's lawyer, Thomas R. Julin, said he'd wait a month or so to see if HPD made any headway, and if they didn't, he said he would resubmit the paper's request. At a press conference the next day, June 13th, the Hollywood City Attorney, Joel Cantor, had to take a lot of heat. If this is an active case, the reporters asked, then what the hell have you people been doing for the last 14 years? What are your leads? What evidence do you have? What have you found out lately? They were asking some pretty probing questions, and Joel was doing his best to tread water. Yeah, everywhere. This entire book has been strange and convoluted and slammed packed with ego and testosterone. Oh my god, now this? What the hell is going on here? I know, right? It just blows my mind. I wasn't at the first courtroom hearing, but I did a great job of sticking up for the HPD afterward. I made a point of telling the press what a great job the cops were doing, but what I really wanted to get across to everyone was one simple thing, that I wasn't trying to keep the case file closed to hide some horrible dark secret. My wife and I, as I had always said, had nothing to hide. So that doesn't make sense either. If you have nothing to hide, then why aren't you showing the case file? Why aren't you allowing it to be open in public? I realize he's still searching for his son, but I have so many questions. I've heard of that cornbread mafia. I thought it was a joke. Apparently, it's not. The only reason that we were fighting so hard against the press register was because we were trying to keep Adam's case from being lost. Well, they can make photocopies. Could you not? I mean, that doesn't even make sense. That's her excuse. That makes me think even more now that John and his wife did not want this case out there because there is something they have to hide. So why couldn't you make photocopies then? That's what I would have done. That's what the reporters could have done. That doesn't even make sense. They were trying to keep Adam's case from being lost. Well, there's such thing as a photocopy machine in 1995, right? I don't understand that. Yeah, that's where it was from. Don Wells tried to blame the cornbread mafia for Summers. Yes. Then on September 26, 1995, the other shoe dropped. The papers renewed their motion to open the file. This time, they were also joined by the Palm Beach Post and one of the really big guns, the Miami Herald. 3 weeks later, on October 18th, 1995, Judge Moe ordered the defendants, Chief Dick Witt and the Hollywood Police, to make all of the records on Adam's case available by noon on February 6th, 1996. I'm wondering if they hid stuff because they don't want the public to know. Because for me, it makes me wonder what exactly was in that file. I want to know myself. Oh, sorry, I had to turn that heat down. Keeps coming on every 5 seconds and I'm boiling. I don't live but 45 minutes from Hawkins County, and my granddaddy's people are from there, and I ain't never heard of it, and I know some rough people. Crazy. So there's no such thing as a cornbread. I don't understand. I thought it was a joke. Like he was just being a stupid drunk and on drugs or something at the time, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the cornbread mafia." This was bad, very bad, but not entirely unexpected, and we were still a long way from giving up the ship. For a couple of months at first, things seemed to die down. Then, just before Christmas of '95, while I was doing my first movie of the week out in California, I got a call from Mark Smith. What? Your BFF once traded me to Honduran gang members once. Oh my god! Holy shit, you must have been terrified. Capone's kid went to the south of Florida, but no one would dare go after him. He was deaf and not a bad guy. Really? Yeah, I wouldn't fuck with Capone's kid. Hell no. That is insane. You got traded. I'll have to go back after the live and watch the part for answers. I really want to know about this. You thought it was a joke too? Yeah, they were both high. Mm-hmm. You don't know at the moment? Okay. Then, just before Christmas of '95, while I was doing my first movie of the week out in California, I got a call from Mark Smith. He sounded a little nervous. John, I just got asked this question and I really don't have the answer, so I've got to check it with you. I'm assuming that they showed you these green shorts and the sandal back in 1984, didn't they? What? I don't remember hearing about that. Green shorts and a sandal. Okay. I was in the middle of a production meeting. I had no idea what he was talking about. What is it, Mark? What are you asking me? I could hear him let out a long breath on the other end of the line. I was afraid you were going to say that, John. Look, there's something I've got to tell you about. In 1984, they found a green pair of child's shorts and a yellow rubber flip-flop buried in Otis Toole's mother's backyard in Jacksonville. Oh, okay. You're lying. John, I was hoping that someone had shown them to you and Rebay, or that you at least knew something about them. I started screaming. Showed us. We didn't even know they existed. How could anyone not have told us? Green shorts and a yellow flip-flop. That's what Adam was wearing when he was... What? Oh my god. That's what Adam was wearing when he was taken? I didn't know that either. Holy shit, SD. Wow. That's scary as hell. I'm sorry you went through that. Oh my god. What if they're atoms? You mean they've just been sitting there all this time and no one could take 2 minutes out of their busy day to pick up the phone and let us fucking know? With all the torture that we've gone through, how could anyone on the planet possibly be so incompetent? On the other end of the phone, Mark was dead silent. It wasn't his fault. He was just the messenger. He had only been working on the case for the last year or so, and he was doing a lot better job than anyone else ever had. He was the one, after all, who had gone back into the evidence room and found these things. What I could not believe was that neither Jack Hoffman nor anyone else had shown me or even told me about this. I kept thinking, what if they're atoms? What if they're atoms? Well, I would imagine it sounds like they are if it's green shorts and yellow flip-flops he was wearing and they found it in Otis O'Toole's backyard. That's weird. That's really fucking weird. Mark said that after the holidays we could come down and he would show us what he had found. On January 16th, 96, we went back for another meeting at the Hollywood Police Station. We all got together beforehand at Mike Christensen's law office in Lauderdale. Me, Reve, my producer, Lance Heflin, my bodyguard, John Reed, and George Terwillinger, a Top Gun Washington lawyer and former deputy attorney general. George has special expertise in law enforcement. Sherry Nolan knew him from her days as a senior policy official in Justice Department. Based on what he had seen already, George's take was that we'd better be prepared because the HPT had done nothing right on this case so far, and there was no reason to believe that they were going to do the right thing now. We sat in Mike's office for a while, discussing how we're going to handle things at the meeting, and then we left for HPD in a caravan of cars. Oh, no worries, Deb. The whole way there, as we had for weeks, Reve and I were thinking about having to see those shorts. It was too much to consider. I waited until the last possible minute to tell Reve about them. I would always get information in bits and pieces, she remembers. John never used to tell me much about the case. If there was something that I had to know, he'd usually wait to let me know. And even then, only if he absolutely had to. I guess it was all part of his protectiveness. You had a fun life. Oh my God. Representing the HPD were Dick Witt, the chief, Mark Smith, the cold case detective, and the HPD officer Paul Dunnigan. We all sat down around a big conference table and it began. A few preliminaries, Witt looking all blown up, red-faced and pompous. He was in charge here. This was his circus, and he was enjoying the limelight, talking on and off. Finally, he asked if Reve and I needed to collect ourselves before we were ready to view the contents of the envelope. By now, Reve, who had been waiting to see the evidence, any evidence, for 15 years, was seething. Ready, she said. We've been ready for years. Witt gave the nod to Mark, who pulled an envelope out of a cardboard box on the floor and slowly opened it up inside. Inside was a mud-crusted pair of running shorts and a little yellow sandal, a tiny little flip-flop, no bigger than what a 3-year-old would wear. Reve knew immediately that they were not atoms. They're not atoms. Take them away, she said. No one knows who those shorts once belonged to. There was no reason to think that finding them meant that a little kid was dead, the cop said. Really? There's no reason to think that finding them meant that a little kid was dead. The cops are saying, are you kidding me? They're in Otis Toole's backyard. He's done these things to children, and you're telling me that finding them doesn't mean that a child was dead. Wow. They didn't know whose shorts these were. It could have been that Hoffman, who described the flip-flop in his report as small enough for a 2 or 3-year-old, assumed that both it and the shorts were not atoms. Still, it was incomprehensible to me how those 2 items could have sat unopened in the HPD evidence room for nearly 12 years. Yeah, it's making no sense again, right? After that was over, Dick Witt said that, from what he knew, Jake Grayland and Dan Christensen, a reporter from the Broward Daily Business Review, were obsessed with a conspiracy theory that I was a bad guy and that someone had killed Adam to retaliate against me. I wonder. So many questions. Then Witt said the weirdest thing. He didn't say those charges were ludicrous. He said, I think we're clean on the immediate family and all those in close proximity to the family. After 14 years, that was his statement about me and my family. And this guy is the guy I was supposed to be relying on to fight the battle to keep my son's case file sealed. Holy shit. So even the cops don't believe John Walsh. Yeah, the more I read, the more I'm on Megan's side. There is something going on, and it's not right. Sorry, that holy shit, that noise was my drink. It's got ice cubes in it. Next, Mark Smith reported on the progress that he and Joe Matthews had made, beginning with a quick synopsis of some of the leads that had gone back over 14 years, most now resolved. Smith had tracked down the security guard at Sears who ordered Adam out of the store, the garden shop door, along with 3 other kids. He had been standing next to the video game area, she remembered. At first, she hadn't recognized the little boy in the photograph that was shown to her. But by that night, when she was shown another picture, she realized that it had been Adam. Schaefer had been afraid to come forward with that information for fear of being blamed. Her parents made the decision that she would not speak any more about the incident, and over the following months she was uncomfortable with the frequent telephone calls and her parents were getting from Sears and its attorneys. Smith said that 2 witnesses from Hollywood had been found who were saying that they had seen Adam in a white Cadillac with a black vinyl roof, the same kind of car that Otis Toole drove. The Jacksonville drifter had told investigators he was driving back in the summer of 1981. Nothing suggested that they had read that in the newspaper. There might have been a photograph of the car years before up in Jacksonville when Toole first surfaced, but nothing else about it in the press. Also, back in 1983, some carpet samples with blood, probably human blood on them, had been taken from the car's interior. DNA tests hadn't existed back then, but it would now be easy enough to determine if the blood was Adam's. There was only one problem. So far, no one had been able to find the samples. Holy frig. Mark had gone up to Jacksonville Police Department and spent 2 days searching the evidence room, but no one seemed to know where the samples had gone since. Imagine that. Also, and what was probably the single most compelling aspect of Otis Toole's confession, Matthews and Smith had found that Toole had described a dirt access road off the Florida Turnpike, a road with a fork in it. Toole said that that was where he had sorry, trigger warning. Toole said was where he had decapitated Adam, and that then he drove about 10 minutes north on the turnpike and threw the head into the canal. The information about the dirt road was in the case file, but so far no press reports had mentioned it, and in fact the road was 4 miles south of the mile marker 130 in Indian River County, which, as we all knew, was where Adam's remains were found. Mark reported that Toole confessed and recanted several times, that he had apparently not been charged because the cops hadn't thought there was enough hard evidence to stand up in court. That so far, the case still wasn't really prosecutable. 6 months before, Mark had spent 2 days interviewing Toole but hadn't gotten much. At the time, Toole was sick with a couple strains of hepatitis, but Mark said he was going to try again. On Toole's deathbed, if necessary. I know, poor baby, right? What was clear from what we were hearing was that, based on Matthews and Smith's work, this was still very much an active investigation and may not have advanced much over the past decade, but now these 2 detectives are more than making up for lost ground. As for me, I was trying to think of whatever I could do to help with the investigation of Toole. I discussed the possibility of writing a letter to the state attorney, Michael Satz, to say that if the death penalty was what was keeping Toole from confessing, then I would agree not to press for it, the same as I had with Jeffrey Dahmer interview. I talked about how we could approach Toole, maybe send Joe Matthews in, get someone who was willing to wear a wire. Then I asked Witt what his intentions about the case file were, and he announced them, that he wanted to release the case file to bring pressure on Toole and force him to confess. We all sat there just looking at him. No one could follow the logic. It made absolutely no sense. Why would you just hand over the only ace you had up your sleeve? But it got worse. Witt said that the case file was 10,000 pages long and that he anticipated quite a demand for it. Why? There had already been more than 100 requests from the media for it, not to mention all those screenwriters and movie producers who had called. So what he was doing was putting all those stacks of pages on microfilm. A police department putting its sealed, sensitive case file on microfilm at taxpayers' expense so that it would be easier for all the reporters to work from? I couldn't believe it. I just sat there with my mouth open. George Tillinger finally said, "I'm a former Deputy Attorney General of the United States. Since when do police put files on microfilm for scumbag journalists?" That was really rabid. Are you telling me that there are news organizations that they're out there that already know you've capitulated and made a deal with the judge? I mean, are you telling me, family of this murdered little boy, in the presence of their attorneys and friends, that you've already agreed to give up the files? This is a travesty. You're crossing a line that has never been broached. You're setting a new precedent in law enforcement here. You're giving it up on capital murder case, and you're denying my family justice. So if they are convinced his killer was found and prosecuted, they found what they could of his body, and the case is closed, why does John continue to publish, do interviews, except for money? It's a very good question, and I don't think we're ever going to get the answer, to be honest. Dick Witt had been given every opportunity to redeem the Hollywood police in my eyes. He could have done the right thing. He could have hunkered down and taken the heat and fought for us. He could have brought honor and credibility to his department. And instead, every time he had the chance to be sensitive or responsible, he chose to be insertive and insensitive and irresponsible. After I got to see Dick Witt in action, all my hopes were dashed. At the end of the meeting, Mike Christensen tried to get a handle on things. "Now, wait a minute," he said. "Before we go, what should I do before we get to this next hearing? What do I need to write? An amicus brief or what?" That was when the HPD's attorney, Joel Cantor, dropped the bombshell. He said, "We've already agreed to it." If Mike Christensen hadn't asked the question, we would have never known. That was when I knew that it was all over. We were too stunned to do anything during this whole thing and the whole meeting. Dick Witt had never taken a single note, didn't even scribble on a notepad to pretend he had, and now I knew why. Dick Witt had no intention of keeping this file closed. The Hollywood police had simply decided to give it up. They caved. You gonna have a glass of wine? Yeah, I don't blame you. But then turns around and says it isn't solved. It isn't done. Somebody messaged me. It says it isn't solved. It isn't done. It's so confusing. I know. It's very confusing. I don't understand it at all. I might have been naive when this whole thing started, but I wasn't anymore. By now I had a lot of experience with the cops, the FBI, and law enforcement. The Hollywood police had just been hiding their decision from us, that they had been overwhelmed and intimidated by the press, and that Dick Witt showed no balls whatsoever. He was rolling over just to get the press off his ass. Putting the case file onto microfilm meant that a lot of people would now be handling it. Joe Matthews already knew that some of the original polygraph charts, the ones for his interview with James Campbell, were not in the case file, even though he had asked at the time that they be placed into evidence. Who knew what else might get lost or even removed? How would anyone ever know? Just after that January 16th meeting, I saw two HPD homicide detectives out in the hallway. I didn't even know them, but at the risk of losing their jobs, they stopped me and under their breath said, "You've got to derail this thing, John. Witt's going to give up those files. This is a train wreck waiting to happen." It was completely irrational. The only possible recourse at this point was to get the state attorney's office to impanel a grand jury, which would prove irrefutably that the case was active. We didn't have much time. At the January 16th meeting, we learned that Witt had not even informed the state attorney's office, the people who had prosecutorial responsibility for the case, of his intention to open the case file. I told everyone that I was going to demand a meeting with the state attorney, Michael Satz, and his deputy, Ralph Ray. Yeah, Dick Witt. All right, I'm going to end it there. I've been reading for over an hour. My throat's getting sore. I do have a video that I wanted to show, though. Hold on. I'm just going to share my screen. All right, so this one is titled The Mysterious Disappearance of Adam and the Unexpected Connection to Elizabeth Smart. Yeah, weird, eh? I don't know, it popped up and I was looking for stuff and I was like, I never heard of that. So I'm wondering, I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm thinking. I have to watch it actually. All right, I'm going to play it.
Remember the first time? You know what you said? What you get into?
That guy is that piece of shit, Otis.
Just like the dream top, smoky city. Once you get into a habit, you do it more and more. Only time comes somebody never killed. They never killed a child.
We appreciate anyone with any information about him or have seen him. They saw him. To please call the Hollywood police.
Ain't no panic. A person's a killer in here. I don't make a difference what it is. Stuff on a brother, he's still killing. So it make a difference what you kill.
We've searched and searched for Adam, and we haven't found a body. So everybody thinks he's alive. We do too.
I just wish it had a happier ending.
You couldn't get Adam alive. You couldn't get Adam back when he was missing, in spite of everything you did. But I believe you saved Elizabeth's life.
Elizabeth, if you're out there, we're doing everything we possibly can to help you.
I'd like to know how he saved Elizabeth's life, though. So according to him, everyone was bamboozling him and lying about his son in the investigation and were hiding everything from him, but he still worked with everyone and does to this day. Yeah, right? Like, what the... I don't understand what the fuck he's talking about. I'm confused, too. I want to know how the hell this helped Elizabeth Smart, though. Because I never heard of that. I know, I think we're all confused. Everyone who's been watching this since day one, we're just like, what the fuck? I need Megan in here.
We want you to come home safely to us.
I remember waking up to the voice saying, I have a knife at your neck. Don't make a sound. Get up and come with me.
I opened my eyes. Standing above me was this dark shadow of a man. As he was taking me up through my house, he had whispered to me, if you scream, if you yell, I'll kill your family or I'll kill you.
The next thing I remember after going to sleep was Mary Catherine coming around the bed to Lois's side and saying, Mom, somebody's taken Elizabeth. As I went from room to room checking, it became more and more of a reality that, no, she was not here. I came down the steps. She was not there. And it really erupted when Lois came down the stairs and turned on the lights in our kitchen and saw the screen cut. Mary Catherine had come down and said, you're not going to find her, a man's taken her. And you just can't even imagine what was Elizabeth going through. Lois was yelling, call 911, and that was the first thing that happened.
The latest on a developing story, and it involves...
I'm assuming you guys know about the Elizabeth Smart story. Eh? If we're confused, imagine how confused he got all these investigators and average policemen. He's frustrating to say the least. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm really freaking confused because that's what I was always wondering recently too. If the killer was Otis Toole, then why is the case still open, or why is it open again? You know what I'm saying? And then his own daughter, he took his own daughter's children away, 3 of them. He's raising 2 of them, and the one that was biracial is in fucking foster care. Yeah.
All parents' worst nightmare. Authorities in Salt Lake City, Utah say 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart was taken from her bedroom in the middle of the night.
Elizabeth, if you're out there, we're doing everything we possibly can to you. We want you to come home safely to us.
joining us this morning from Salt Lake City. Elizabeth Smart's father, Edward Smart. Anything new, anything hopeful?
I'm unaware of any new, really conclusive leads.
The police are telling us don't get in the way of it.
Come on, guys. If you can't do it, we should be able to go out and do it.
This was not going to turn out good. And every homicide investigator I've known throughout this country felt exactly the same way.
One of the things about the Elizabeth Smart case that bothers me the most and makes me sick to my stomach, after 8 months, FBI was ready to close down the case. Salt Lake City police, they believed that she was probably dead in the desert.
We were looking for a body at that point.
I absolutely know that Elizabeth is still alive.
So go, John, you're the court of last resort. You're the guy who catches the impossible catches. Remember one thing. Elizabeth is the missing child. Elizabeth is the victim. This girl needed somebody to save her. Back in
Well, okay, that is the connection. I had no idea that the Elizabeth Smart case was featured on America's Most Wanted at all. Now I know.
'81, the American dream, the beautiful wife, the house in the suburbs, and a beautiful 6-year-old son. And one day I went to work, kissed my son goodbye, and never saw him again. She took him to this day in 1981. Video games were brand new. So two boys, about 12, 13 years old, were playing. Adam was mesmerized by that, asked his mom, can I stay here and watch him?
Rebecca said, Adam, I'll be in the lamp department 2 hours over. And he said, Mommy, I know where that is. And 10 minutes later, she returned and he was gone. We have searched and searched for Adam, and we haven't found a body. So everybody thinks he's alive. We do too. And we feel that since you people have searched so hard, the best thing we can do now is get these flyers in everybody's hands, because the police are so frustrated. Nobody's really come forth, and the clues that we have, really, we haven't come up with anything substantial.
He's our only child, beautiful little boy, and we just want him back more than anything.
2 weeks later, they received devastating news. Adam had been murdered.
We think we gave it our best effort to bring him back. I just wish it had a happier ending.
I was at my most darkest point, and I'd gotten all kinds of advice from rabbis and Protestant ministers and Catholic.
Yeah, the biracial child was in foster care. Yep, that was the one that she just had, Megan just had, and he took it right from her. And now the baby is in foster care. I think she was fighting to get it back. I have to check, but I hope she gets them all back. It doesn't make sense. Like, how could you do that to your own daughter? She beat cancer, for fuck's sake. She's an amazing woman. I mean, how could you don't do that to your kids? Like, I don't understand it. All because she's talking about Adam. She does not believe that what he's going with. Yeah, he's got the other two. They're white. But this new baby, the biracial one, he has put in foster care. It is messed up. It's a horrible.
Priest. None of it worked for me. I really felt there was no God, no higher power. And I went to go get Adam. I called up the Broward County Medical Examiner and said, look, I need to bury this little boy. I need to honor him. I need to have somewhere to go and honor him. I got in his office and I said, I want Adam's remains and I want him tomorrow. And I want to bury that little boy. And he said, you can't have his remains. You can't take him back. It's evidence in a capital murder. And until the capital murder is solved, you'll never get Adam's remains. And he says, look, you mounted the largest search effort for a missing child. You used your business contacts, the airline, you did things that were never done. Why don't you make a difference? You can do that. He said, look at all the people who help you. And he said, if you're thinking about suicide, and I said, it's an option for me. And I said, you have no right to tell me not to kill myself. I have no business. I can't speak to my wife. My whole life is disintegrated. He said, you'd be a coward. I said, I'm not a coward. He says, I know you're not a coward. You're a fighter. He said, so get back in the ring. Fight for that little boy. Make sure that that little boy didn't die in vain. And he says, I believe in a higher power, that you're given this chance to make a choice. Do good, do evil, but it's free will. I still have the heartache. I still have the rage. I know what it's like to be there waiting for some answers. And over those years, I learned how to do one thing really well.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to mute. So this show is now, it's called The Hunt that he's now on, because there's no more America's Most Wanted. Also, I wanted to mention, So they have a grave for Adam, but the police still have his remains. That's all the information I have read and have thus far. So if that's true, and which it is true, Megan Walsh wants to know. Megan Walsh has given, I think it was 3 samples of her blood to test against the head that they had found, and they keep apparently losing her blood samples. So they have the head and they can test against her, but they haven't done it. It doesn't make any fucking sense to me. I'm super suspicious. Yeah, he is too egotistic in order to, yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. So I was talking to Sayla and I'm like, this is ridiculous. What I would do is I would go in there and I'd be like, take my blood, and I would sit right there. If it took 2 days, I don't care. I'm staying right there. So they can't quote unquote lose them. Because no, something's very wrong here. It's not Adam. She knows it. They know it. It's ridiculous.
That's how to catch these bastards and bring them back to justice. I become a manhunter. I'm out there looking for bad guys. This girl needed somebody to save her.
Now we got a late-breaking case we need your help on tonight, and our Tom Morris has the story.
We started out the investigation with bad information and nothing much to go on, and it never got any better for us, really, until Ed and John Walsh broadcast that story about Emmanuel.
He certainly had those predator skills. He had a lot to hide. He had a rap sheet a mile long.
His ex-wife, Debbie Mitchell, saw his picture come on the screen, and she just almost started hyperventilating.
America's Most Wanted. Brian David Mitchell's ex-wife calls America's Most Wanted hotline and says he goes by the name Emmanuel. He's a street preacher. He's a con artist. He's got some psycho girlfriend or wife or whatever she is named Wanda Barcy. While I was married to him, he molested my daughter, which was his stepdaughter, and she's suicidal now. Bombshell.
911. Yes, I think I see that Emmanuel they're looking for, and he's with 2 ladies.
My dispatcher said we got a report of some citizens calling in some suspicious people walking down State Street.
A whole bunch of police cars pulled up next to us.
Officer Jones was talking to the male individual. My attention was drawn to the female. When I took a closer look at her, I recognized her as possibly resembling Elizabeth Smart.
She was visibly shaken. Her heart was pounding so hard you could see it moving her shirt.
She kept kind of looking over towards him. He was telling Officer Rasmussen at the time, "You're not allowed to talk to her. She's my daughter. Don't talk to her."
At that point, I took her aside and said, you look a lot like Elizabeth Smart, and I think you are Elizabeth Smart. And your family's looking for you, and you need to make contact with them, Elizabeth.
I'd spent the last 9 months being...
We told her, "Say, it's over. All you have to do is say, you're Elizabeth Smart."
Her eyes welled up with tears. You could tell if you wanted just to physically say it, that she wouldn't.
My captors are right there. Those same threats and the same pressures of if you don't do exactly what we've told you, exactly what we've prepared you for, we're going to kill you.
Mitchell's outside, still kind of being loud.
Why didn't she run? She was 14 years old. Why didn't she escape when she could? Well, first of all, this guy broke into her house in the middle of the night and kidnapped her and told her every single day, if you run or you try to run, I will go back and kill your little sister. I will kill your mother. You don't have a right to question why this girl didn't run away.
What if the policemen didn't believe me? What if they released me back to Mitchell and Barzy? What would they do to me? What would they do to my family?
I asked her one last time, for your own peace of mind, for your family, for yourself, tell us that you're Elizabeth Smart. And she says, "Thou say it."
Detective said, "Ed, I want you to stop everything right now and come directly down to Sandy Police Department." An officer said, "Oh, Mr. Smart, come this way." And I went down the hall.
Just gonna read what you're saying. Yeah, I agree too, Skulls. Absolutely. How did Walsh go from being a victim to a TV host to a criminal investigator? He isn't the one who solved these. I know. Right? Well, his daughter, Megan, keeps saying he's got connections. He is, wherever he is, somehow, some way, this guy he's hooked up. Very hooked up. Yeah, I remember the Smart girl as well. Did she end up having children, Elizabeth, because of that monster that kidnapped her? I can't remember. There's a couple other cases that are very similar, and I can't remember. So the police still have the skull. What's stopping them from doing the DNA? Wild and mystery, wouldn't you want to know? Geez. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Well, get this. Megan keeps giving blood, hair samples, whatever they need to test it against the head, and they keep losing her fucking DNA samples. It does something's up here. I don't understand it. Something is not right. Well, we can only tell by the two heads, right? Okay, good. Bad but good in that sense. We know that the remains in Adam's picture, it doesn't add up. It's not the same head. I don't know. I don't know what to say. It's so confusing. I'm almost at the end of this book, so I don't know, probably a couple more weeks of it. Yeah, she has a beautiful family now. Good.
They said, well, we think we may have found Elizabeth. And I stood there, and I looked at this girl.
And I just started crying. And finally I said, Elizabeth, is it you? And she said, yes, Dad, it's really me. And then she started to cry.
I was so happy when I saw him. When he came running over and just grabbed me in his arms, I knew that nobody would ever be able to hurt me ever again.
I'll never forget it. I was the one who got tears in my eyes because Ed said, you couldn't get Adam alive. You couldn't get Adam back when he was missing, in spite of everything you did. But I believe you saved Elizabeth's life. She was so thin. She was so frail. She was so fragile. And she said, thank you. She just said, thank you for never giving up. And I said, we finally got somebody back.
Wow. Way to make it about you, John. Yeah, it's not the same. Not at all. And anyone can see that looking at the head exactly. She is incredible. I've seen a couple updates here and there. Yeah, she's amazing.
Got one back alive to her loving family.
Coming back here to the remote mountainside camp became her prison. Is Elizabeth Smart now? The young girl who was held captive even faced her tormentor again at his trial in 2010. And when they made eye contact, she knew that Brian David Mitchell, the man she awoke to see in her bedroom that awful night, no longer had the power to terrify her.
I had moved forward. He was no longer a part of my life. He no longer could hurt me. He was nothing to me anymore. He had no part in my life.
What didn't Brian David Mitchell understand about Elizabeth Smart?
That I couldn't be broken.
Now to a dramatic turn in the story of Don Walsh. As you know, he's made a career out of helping police solve crime. TV show America's Most Wanted. But one case couldn't crack his own son, Adam. Now, more than a quarter century after the 6-year-old did South.
Of missing children, murdered children, all don't give up.
There's Megan right there, Reve, John, and his two sons. I know, it pissed me off too. That's why I was like, way to make it about you. Okay, so this is where they're saying that the case is solved now? Yeah, okay.
Hope. Sometimes you have to stay. Sometimes you're the best and last hope to get justice.
We never give up. I've learned over the years, don't give up. Anything you can do. I think everybody is presented with challenges, some greater than others. I was given a real challenge, and I think you stop feeling sorry for yourself. You start thinking about the people that love you and helped you and supported you, and get back in. You saddle up. You literally saddle up, and you go in there, and you try to make sure that your life has some merit to it.
On New Year's Day 2002, 13-year-old Alicia stepped out of her parents' home and into a living nightmare. She had agreed to meet a friend she'd been chatting with online for 6 months.
We were having a family dinner, and
Next to the flag is Megan. Yeah, that's her. She had cancer on her nose. Her whole nose was caved in, and she used CBD oil and like a rub, and that is apparently what helped her. It got rid of it. I'm gonna read some of the comments. See what I want to say. Listen to this. You want to hear something outrageous? Some people were outraged by John Walsh jokingly suggesting putting explosives in child offenders' rear and then detonating them if they harmed a child again. I, for one, think that's a great idea. So do I. Yeah, everybody is saying he's a hero and one of the best humanitarians. I want to see a bad quote here or bad message. Now they're saying John Walsh deserves a Medal of Honor. I admire John. I always want to meet him. This really hurts to watch. The Walsh family has been friends with mine for a very, very long time. We're all from the same town. I remember being told Adam was taken. I was around 10 years old. It was awful. John is a great man who has helped so many people. Really? I don't know what this means, but they also said, oh, and unseen, the bed music is too fucking loud, annoying loud. Cut that shit out. What? Yeah, there's nothing on here. It's all praising John. I want to know who their killer was, though. It didn't say. Yeah, there's nothing in here. Yeah, I don't see anything about him. Anything bad. Just that he's strong, he's amazing, he's a hero. Whatever. Yeah, she did. I would have felt the same way before this book, probably because they got rid of all the negative comments. That's what I'm thinking. Usually people do that. Yeah, you're right. Especially, it's such a KJ move. Yeah, they probably did. I didn't really. I knew it was complicated. It's worse than that. Oh, I stopped feeling sorry for him once I started paying attention to Megan. She's on Twitter and she posts stuff every single day. Every single day, if you guys want to follow her, she's just under Megan Walsh. She's she's out for blood. She wants her fucking kids back. Every day, all day, she's blaming her parents, her mom and dad. She's angry, and I don't blame her. She's a strong woman. She beat cancer. Like her nose was, oh my god, it was horrible. Look up Megan Walsh's nose. It was wow. It was so bad. It was all caved in and horrible. Now it's perfect. His reason for taking that she was just an unfit mom. So he's raising the two white ones, and the mixed one is in foster care. That was she. As soon as she had that baby, what was it, a couple days later, he came and took it. He's got connections all where Megan lives, so she doesn't get a say in anything. It's awful. It really is. I see what she posts every day, and every day she's fighting and fighting and fighting. That's the thing. There was no proof, apparently, and because he's John Walsh, he can do whatever he wants. Yeah, that's exactly what Megan says. He's powerful now. Look at him. He's got all these shows. He's got all the cops on his side. He can run for president and probably win. That's how powerful this guy is. He does what he wants. He gets what he wants. And we all know he's cocky from me just reading this book. It's insane, the cockiness of this guy. I always like love John Walsh. Now, nope. This book was made in 1997. Yeah, there is claims that the parents had something to do with Adam's death. Absolutely. Megan is claiming that her parents had something to do, more or less her father had something to do with Adam's death. And because she's speaking out about her brother, her father, John Walsh, has taken her children to punish her. That's what she's claiming, and that's what's been published everywhere. I agree. See, we all agree. Of all the people in here, we're all saying something's fishy, especially with that picture. That head is not Adam's. It's not. You can't grow a tooth when you're dead. You just can't. And with the remains being checked and rechecked and whatever, they say that he died the same day he was taken, right? So then how is there an extra tooth? There's no teeth. He had 2 front teeth missing. It's not his, no. It makes me mad. I wish Sayla was here. She's going through a lot though. Sayla Rosa Sharon, she always usually does this with me on Mondays, but she's poor girl. She's going through a lot. I'll just leave it at that. So I did message her and let her know, if you don't feel comfortable, please don't. After all this is said and done, though, we want to have Megan on. Sayla's talking to her. I've messaged her. And that seems to be what we're going to do. Because she wants the story out about her parents and her brother. All this power and money. How many other parents gain this much power and fame when their child dies? That's what everybody was saying too, Benita. How's that even possible? So who's John Walsh? What about John Walsh gets this much attention? Nobody else's kid ever had that like this happen ever. That went missing. Nobody else's parents had this much attention and everything else on their children ever. So what makes John Walsh so special? I'd love to know. Yeah, I can't wait for her to come over. It'll be amazing. We're gonna watch the movies too. The Adam Walsh TV movie, and then I guess there's a second one. I don't know if it's any good or not, but we'll watch it and just see how it turned out, because I never did see it. They're on YouTube, so you can watch them. I'll just do a live one time, and I'll stop it every now and then though, so I don't get a copyright strike or claim or anything. All right, I should go. Speaking of sons, my little man needs to get his cute little ass in that shower. Get ready for school tomorrow. And I got to get some homework done. I got to go to the hearing clinic again. You've seen something, but you don't remember what it's called. Yeah. Thanks for joining me, guys, and thanks for your input. I really appreciate it. I'll be back every Monday. Oh, what's this? Change.org. No. Yeah, there it is. Thank you, Dad. I had it somewhere, but it's so hard to do on, it's so hard to put stuff on when you're on StreamYard. So there's I did sign it too. There's the, oh my God, the change.org petition. Yeah, it's to get our kids back. So please sign, guys. You sent me a message? Okay. Yeah, I just have to get my ears checked again. I got my hearing aids and everything, but they just want to make sure they're working properly and that they're at the full, I guess, volume that I can take anyways. All right, guys, sign that petition if you don't mind, please and thank you. And I'll be back Monday with this story anyways. Try and get to the end of it, watch some movies, talk to Megan. I think that'll be good. Spread some awareness. All right, guys, you have a great night. Thanks for joining me. Bye.